My name is Kitty Williams, 32 years old, and I was the most underestimated senior network engineer at Quantum Solutions. They nicknamed me IT Barbie because I wore pink and smiled too much. When the boss's niece Eleanor joked about the blinking server lights keeping me entertained, I just nodded and said I understand completely. What they never realized was that I had already mapped out their digital footprints, every single one. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you are viewing from, and hit that subscribe button before I reveal how one perfectly executed algorithm changed everything forever. I joined Quantum Solutions 4 years ago with a dual master's in computer science and network security from MIT. My resume sparkled with certifications and accomplishments that should have commanded respect in any tech environment. But from day one, I noticed the sideways glances, the subtle dismissals, and the constant need to prove myself over and over again. Quantum Solutions was one of those tech companies that prided itself on being innovative, while its culture remained firmly rooted in the past. The glass offices and modern furniture created an illusion of progressiveness that the actual workplace dynamics failed to deliver. The company specialized in developing security systems for major financial institutions, and I had been thrilled when they recruited me based on my thesis project about vulnerability detection. The founder and CEO, Walter Thompson, built the company from nothing 20 years ago. An old-school programmer who made his fortune in the first tech boom, Walter ran things with a mixture of technical brilliance and outdated management practices. His right-hand man was Christopher Jackson, the chief operations officer, who handled the business side with ruthless efficiency. My direct supervisor, Aaron Phillips, was competent but spineless. He recognized my skills privately but rarely acknowledged them in group settings. Then there was Eleanor Thompson, Walter's niece, recently graduated with a business degree and installed as the head of innovation and strategy despite having zero technical knowledge. She had a corner office while I shared a cubicle with 2 junior developers. The rest of the tech team was predominantly male, with only 2 other women in technical roles. Patricia, in QA testing, kept her head down and avoided confrontation, while Stephanie, in database management, had adapted by becoming one of the guys. I refused to do either. I still remember my first week when I suggested a more efficient approach to a security protocol during a team meeting. Aaron nodded thoughtfully before Jackson cut in. That seems unnecessarily complicated, Kitty. Let's stick with what we know works. Later that day, when Mason Young, a mid-level developer with half my qualifications, suggested virtually the same solution, Jackson praised his innovative thinking. That is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need around here, Mason. Great job. I documented this incident in a small notebook I kept in my desk drawer. It would be the first of many. Despite these challenges, I loved the actual work. The systems we were building were complex and fascinating, and I took pride in crafting elegant security solutions that protected millions of financial transactions daily. I specialized in what we called the backbone, the core infrastructure that everything else relied upon. Without anyone quite realizing it, I had become the person who understood the entirety of our systems better than anyone else. My personal life was busy but fulfilling. I lived in a modest apartment about 20 minutes from the office, where I raised 2 cats and maintained a small but thriving collection of orchids. My parents lived a few hours away, and I visited them monthly. My father, a retired mathematics professor, had encouraged my love of logic and systems from an early age. My mother, a lawyer, had taught me to document everything and know my rights. Both lessons would prove invaluable. In my second year at Quantum, I began noticing security vulnerabilities in our internal systems. Nothing that compromised client data, but gaps that could potentially be exploited. I created comprehensive reports and submitted them through proper channels. Most were acknowledged but deemed low priority. I kept copies of everything. By my 3rd year, I had quietly built something I called the SARA Protocol System Assessment and Response Algorithm. It was technically a monitoring system that I had official approval to develop, but I had added capabilities that went well beyond its stated purpose. SARA could track every digital interaction within our company systems, from emails to code commits to database queries. It cataloged patterns of behavior and could identify anomalies. More importantly, it could be programmed to respond automatically to certain triggers. No one ever read my full documentation. They saw what they expected to see, a smart but ultimately limited IT Barbie, who was good at following directions and keeping systems running. The nickname started casually. I had worn a pink blouse one day, and Mason had quipped, "Here comes IT Barbie." A few people laughed, and it stuck. At first I tried to laugh it off. Then I tried expressing that I found it unprofessional. Both approaches only reinforced the nickname. What they failed to understand was that I had spent my entire career being underestimated. Each time someone dismissed me, I simply worked harder, learned more, and prepared for the moment when preparation would meet opportunity. I smiled and nodded and wore what I wanted while becoming indispensable to the company infrastructure in ways even I had not initially planned. I made sure to document every instance of discrimination in my notebook. Every time someone interrupted me in meetings, every time my ideas were dismissed only to be praised when repeated by a male colleague, every inappropriate comment about my appearance or assumptions about my technical abilities, I was building a case methodically and patiently. The dynamic might have continued indefinitely if not for the arrival of Alexander Wright, brought in as the new Chief Technology Officer after our previous CTO retired. Alexander had a reputation for building high-performing technical teams, and I initially had hopes that things might change under his leadership. For the first few weeks, Alexander observed silently attending meetings and reviewing systems. I noticed him watching me during technical discussions, his expression unreadable. Then came the announcement of a major new client, one that would require significant system upgrades and security enhancements. This was my chance to showcase my expertise and perhaps finally gain the recognition I deserved. Little did I know that this project would become the catalyst that would change everything at Quantum Solutions and ultimately reveal just how dangerous it can be to underestimate the woman they called it Barbie. The new client was Maxwell Financial Group, a Fortune 500 company with stringent security requirements and a reputation for being demanding. Securing their business was a coup for Quantum Solutions, and Walter made it clear that failure was not an option. The project would require an overhaul of our existing security protocols and the development of new custom features. Our first planning meeting for the Maxwell project revealed exactly where I stood in the company hierarchy. Alexander Wright, our new CTO, called the technical team together in the main conference room. As one of the senior engineers most familiar with our security architecture, I had prepared extensively, bringing detailed notes and suggestions. "We need to assign team leads for each component," Alexander announced, writing on the whiteboard. "Jackson will oversee the project as a whole. Aaron will handle client communications. Mason, you will lead the security protocols team." I waited for my name, but it never came. When assignments had been distributed to nearly every senior person in the room except me, I raised my hand. "Excuse me, Alexander. I notice I have not been assigned a leadership role. Given my experience with our security backbone, I believe I could contribute significantly to the protocol team, or perhaps lead the infrastructure integration." The room went quiet. Alexander looked at me as if just noticing my presence. "Kitty Wright, we need you to maintain the existing systems while the team focuses on the Maxwell project. We cannot risk any disruptions to current operations." In other words, I was being sidelined to do maintenance, while the exciting career-advancing work went to others, primarily men with less experience than me. With all due respect, I have the most extensive knowledge of our security architecture. I literally wrote most of the protocols we are currently using. Jackson cut in before Alexander could respond. "Kitty, someone needs to keep the lights on, and you do that so well. Consider it a compliment to your reliability." A few people chuckled. I saw Eleanor whisper something to the person next to her, glancing in my direction with a smirk. I nodded politely and made another note in my ever-growing documentation. That evening I stayed late reviewing the company organization charts and security clearances. If I was going to be relegated to keeping the lights on, I would make sure I had access to every system that might need maintenance. The next few weeks established a clear pattern. The Maxwell project team had daily meetings in the glass-walled conference room. I watched from my cubicle as they collaborated occasionally, glancing at me as if I were an afterthought. Twice I submitted suggestions through the proper channels, detailed analyses of potential security improvements. Both times my emails were acknowledged with a cursory "thanks. We will consider this," and then apparently ignored. Until one Wednesday morning when Mason approached my desk looking slightly uncomfortable. "Hey Kitty, that thing you mentioned about the encryption handshake, Alexander wants to implement something similar. Could you send me your notes on it?" I smiled. "Of course. happy to help. The following day, during the project update meeting that the entire company attended, Mason presented his solution to the encryption challenge, using diagrams that looked remarkably similar to mine, with a few cosmetic changes. Walter and Jackson praised his innovative thinking. Alexander nodded approvingly. Eleanor, seated next to her uncle, caught my eye across the room and gave me a patronizing smile. After the meeting, I overheard her talking to a group by the coffee machine. The boys are doing such amazing work on the Maxwell project. So technical I can barely keep up. I walked past with my own coffee and she turned to me. Kitty, you must feel so relieved not to be dealing with all that complicated stuff. All those meetings would cut into your online shopping time, right? Before I could respond, she added louder for the benefit of the group. Someone should get the IT Barbie to the server room. The blinking lights should keep her entertained for hours. The group laughed, including Aaron, who had the grace to look slightly ashamed when he saw me watching. I understand completely, I said, with a measured smile, then returned to my desk. That night, I activated a new feature in SARA. It would now log every instance where my code or suggestions were used without attribution. It would also begin generating detailed reports on productivity metrics across the company, identifying who was actually doing the work versus who was taking credit. The following week, things escalated further. A technical crisis emerged when one of our existing clients reported unusual activity in their financial transaction systems. While the Maxwell team continued their project work, I was tasked with investigating the anomaly. Working through the night, I identified the issue, a subtle bug in a recent update that only manifested under specific high-volume conditions. I corrected it, documented the fix, and submitted a comprehensive report before 7 a.m. At 10 a.m., there was an emergency meeting. I arrived to find Walter, Jackson, and Alexander already discussing the situation with Mason, who was explaining the fix. Fortunately, I noticed the pattern in the transaction logs and was able to isolate the problem Mason was saying, gesturing to my diagrams projected on the screen. I cleared my throat. Actually, I identified and fixed that issue early this morning. That is my report Mason is presenting. The room went silent. Mason looked at his shoes. Alexander spoke first. Kitty, there is no need to be territorial. We are all on the same team here. Walter nodded. The important thing is that the problem is solved. Good team effort. I maintained my composure. I worked through the night to solve this issue. The timestamps on the code commits, and report submission will confirm that. Jackson waved his hand dismissively. Let's not get caught up in who did what when. The client is happy, that is what matters. Later that day, Eleanor stopped by my desk with a patronizing smile. I heard you got a little emotional in the meeting this morning. You know how it looks when women get confrontational, right? Not a good career move. I looked up from my screen. Thank you for your concern, Eleanor. I always appreciate feedback. She seemed disappointed by my calm response. Just trying to help. Not everyone understands how things work in tech like I do. As she walked away, I made two decisions. First, I would accelerate my documentation efforts, gathering evidence of every instance of discrimination and credit theft. Second, I would complete the final phase of SARA, a feature I had conceptualized but not yet implemented. That weekend, while the office was empty, I came in to perform routine maintenance. With no one watching, I expanded SARA's capabilities, giving it access to every system in the company, and adding a crucial new function, the ability to selectively restrict access based on customizable criteria. I called this new feature Career Endgame Protocol. It was elegant in its simplicity. If triggered, it would systematically review all digital communications code contributions and documented incidents. Then, based on specific thresholds of misconduct, it would automatically adjust system permissions, essentially rendering certain individuals unable to perform their jobs, while simultaneously revealing their actual contributions or lack thereof to projects. The beauty of it was its precision. It would not harm company operations or client data. It would simply create transparency where there had been obfuscation and credit theft. As I finalized the protocol, I remembered something my mother had told me years ago. Justice does not always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from simply revealing the truth at exactly the right moment. The Maxwell project continued to progress with me working in the background fixing issues that the team created but never receiving acknowledgement. Each time Mason or someone else presented my solutions as their own, I added it to SARA's database. Each dismissive comment, each instance of being talked over in meetings, each time Eleanor referred to me as it Barbie, it all went into the system. I was no longer just documenting these incidents. I was weaponizing them, creating a comprehensive case that would be impossible to dismiss when the time came. And that time was approaching faster than anyone at Quantum Solutions could possibly imagine. 2 months into the Maxwell project, Walter announced that the client wanted to visit our offices for a comprehensive technical review. This would be the crucial meeting that would determine whether Maxwell Financial would proceed with the full implementation or scale back to a more limited engagement. "This is our moment to shine," Walter told the assembled team. "Maxwell is bringing their Chief Information Security Officer and technical team. They want to deep dive into our security architecture and implementation plans." Jackson clapped his hands together. "Everyone needs to be prepared for detailed technical questions. Mason, you will lead the security protocol presentation. Aaron, you will handle the implementation timeline. Alexander will oversee the technical demonstrations." I raised my hand. "What about the security backbone presentation? That is my area of expertise." Walter looked at me with mild surprise, as if he had forgotten I was in the room. "Kitty, we need you to make sure all systems are running smoothly during the visit. We cannot afford any technical glitches." "I understand that," I said carefully. "But given that I designed much of the security architecture that will be presented, would not it make sense for me to be part of the presentation team?" Eleanor rolled her eyes. "Uncle Walter, we should stick with the strongest technical presenters. First impressions matter with clients of this caliber." Alexander nodded in agreement. "Kitty, your role is crucial, but behind the scenes. The client needs to see a seamless operation, and that is what you provide best." I felt a familiar twist in my stomach, the sensation I had come to associate with being professionally erased, but I nodded and returned to my seat. After the meeting, I was updating documentation at my desk when I overheard Mason talking to a few other engineers about the upcoming presentation. "I am worried about some of the technical questions," he admitted. "The encryption protocol is still giving me trouble." Aaron nodded. "Just get with Kitty. She can explain it to you in simple terms so you can present it convincingly." They laughed, not realizing I could hear them. "Right," Mason said. "It Barbie to the rescue. She can make me some nice pretty slides with not too many big words." I continued typing, my face expressionless. That evening, I made an addition to the career endgame protocol specifically targeting presentation materials and knowledge attribution. The day before the Maxwell visit, Mason approached my desk. "Hey Kitty, I need your help with the security presentation. Some of the technical details are a bit over my head." I smiled pleasantly. "Of course, Mason. I would be happy to help." For the next 3 hours, I walked him through the complex security protocols I had designed, explaining each component and answering his questions. I prepared clear, detailed notes that he could reference during his presentation. "Thanks, Kitty," he said when we finished. "You really understand this stuff. It is almost like you should be giving this presentation." He laughed at his own joke. Almost, I agreed with a smile. "Good luck tomorrow." That night I could not sleep. 4 years of being undermined, having my work stolen, being called it Barbie, all of it weighed on me. I had played by the rules, documented everything, tried to advocate for myself within the system. And for what? To be hidden away during the most important client meeting while others presented my work as their own. I made my decision at 3 a.m. The career endgame protocol would activate during the Maxwell presentation, but not in a way anyone would expect. It would be subtle at first, then increasingly impossible to ignore. The day of the Maxwell visit arrived. The office was buzzing with nervous energy. Walter and Jackson greeted the clients in the lobby, while the technical team made last-minute preparations in the main conference room. I stationed myself at my desk, ostensibly monitoring systems, but actually preparing to execute the most professionally risky action of my career. The Maxwell team entered the conference room, a group of serious-looking executives led by Diana Mitchell, their formidable Chief Information Security Officer. I had researched her extensively and knew she had a reputation for technical brilliance and zero tolerance for incompetence. Walter began with company introductions, presenting his leadership team and the project leads. I watched through the glass walls as he gestured to various people, never once looking in my direction. Then Mason stood to begin the technical presentation about the security architecture, the one I had spent years developing, and the past 3 hours explaining to him. Our security approach is multi-layered, he began confidently. The foundation is our proprietary encryption protocol that ensures. He clicked to advance his slide, but instead of showing his next point, the screen displayed a simple message: Credit Attribution System activated. Mason looked confused, clicking again. The slide changed to show a pie chart titled Actual Contribution to Security Architecture. My name was associated with 76% of the content. Mason's contribution was listed as 4%. I'm not sure what this is, Mason stammered, frantically clicking to move past it. The next slide appeared normal for a moment, then text began appearing at the bottom, annotating each technical point with the name of the actual author. My name appeared repeatedly. Diana Mitchell leaned forward, her interest clearly piqued. Could you explain this attribution system? It seems quite innovative. Before Mason could respond, his presentation was replaced by a new window showing a live log of all the times my suggestions had been used without credit, along with timestamps and the eventual implementers. Next to it appeared the transcript of yesterday's conversation where Mason had admitted the technical details were over his head. Walter jumped to his feet. Technical difficulties. Let us take a short break. Alexander was already on his phone, presumably calling IT support. The irony was not lost on me that I was the IT support he would normally call. I continued calmly working at my desk as chaos erupted in the conference room. Jackson emerged, his face flushed with anger, and headed straight for me. What is happening in there? He demanded. I looked up innocently. Is there a problem with the presentation? The slides are changing themselves, showing some kind of attribution system. Did you do this? I maintained my composure. I am not in control of Mason's presentation. Perhaps he should present information he actually understands, instead of taking credit for other people's work. Jackson's eyes narrowed. Fix this. Now. I cannot fix a problem I did not create, I replied calmly. And even if I could, I am not part of the presentation team. Remember, I am just here to keep the lights on. As Jackson stormed back to the conference room, Eleanor approached my desk, her face contorted with rage. I do not know what kind of stunt you are pulling, she hissed, but you are finished here. Do you understand me? Finished. I looked directly into her eyes. I understand completely. And that was when Phase 2 of the Career Endgame Protocol activated. Throughout the office, computer screens began displaying personalized data about each employee's actual work contributions versus claimed accomplishments. Email threads appeared showing instances of discrimination, credit theft, and inappropriate comments. My meticulous documentation was being revealed for all to see. In the conference room, Diana Mitchell was now standing examining the changing displays with professional interest rather than shock. I could see Walter attempting to regain control of the situation while Alexander frantically tried to stop whatever was happening to the systems. I took a deep breath and walked toward the conference room, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. The moment I had been preparing for had arrived, and there was no turning back now. I entered the conference room as dignified chaos unfolded. Walter was attempting to apologize to the Maxwell team while Alexander and a few engineers huddled around a laptop, desperately trying to regain control of the presentation system. Diana Mitchell, the CISO from Maxwell Financial, stood slightly apart, studying the displayed information with professional curiosity. When I walked in, her eyes immediately locked on mine with a spark of recognition. Miss Williams, she said, surprising everyone by knowing my name. I was wondering when you would join us. Walter turned, confusion and anger battling on his face. Kitty, what is happening? Did you do this? I maintained perfect composure. What you are seeing is the SARA Protocol in action. System assessment and response algorithm. It was developed and implemented with company approval, though perhaps not with full understanding of its capabilities. Turn it off, Jackson demanded. Whatever game you are playing, it ends now. It is not a game, I replied calmly. SARA is simply displaying factual information attribution of work documentation of interactions and performance metrics. All information the company already has, just organized differently. Eleanor stepped forward. This is ridiculous. She is just trying to make herself look important because she could not handle being left out of the presentation. Diana Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Actually, based on what I am seeing, Miss Williams appears to be the primary architect of the security systems we are considering implementing. Yet she was not included in this presentation. May I ask why? The room fell silent. Walter cleared his throat. There seems to have been a misunderstanding about role assignments. A misunderstanding, I repeated. Is that what we are calling it? Let me clarify then. I turned to the Maxwell team. For 4 years, I have designed and maintained the core security infrastructure at Quantum Solutions. I have had my work consistently attributed to others, been called Barbie as a professional nickname, and been told that my proper place is being entertained by blinking server lights. I gestured to the screens around the room, now displaying a comprehensive timeline of incidents. Every instance has been documented and time-stamped. SARA has simply organized this information to reveal the actual working dynamics of this company. Alexander stepped forward. Whatever your grievances, this is not the appropriate forum. Shut down this system immediately. I cannot do that, I said. SARA is currently in autonomous mode. It will continue displaying relevant information for approximately 17 minutes, then return control of all systems. No data has been damaged or compromised. Client information remains secure. SARA is simply creating transparency. Walter turned to the Maxwell team. I sincerely apologize for this disruption. We will reschedule at your convenience after we have resolved this internal matter. Diana Mitchell shook her head. That will not be necessary. This has been most illuminating. She looked directly at me. Miss Williams, based on the technical specifications I am seeing, you appear to be precisely the kind of security architect we want designing our systems. However, I have serious concerns about the culture at Quantum Solutions. She turned to Walter. We will be in touch regarding our decision. In the meantime, I suggest you address the issues being revealed here. Talent management is a critical component of security management. As the Maxwell team prepared to leave, Diana handed me her business card. Call me, she said quietly, regardless of how this plays out. Once the clients had departed, the full force of the company's anger turned toward me. Walter's face was nearly purple. My office. Now he growled. I followed him along with Jackson, Alexander, and Eleanor. Aaron trailed behind, looking uncomfortable. The rest of the staff stood frozen, still processing the revelations playing out on their screens. In Walter's office, Jackson was the first to speak. You are fired. Effective immediately. What you did was corporate sabotage. I remained calm. Actually, it was transparency. SARA revealed only factual information already documented within company systems. No confidential data was exposed. No systems were damaged. You humiliated the entire company in front of our biggest potential client, Eleanor nearly shouted. No, I corrected her. The company humiliated itself through its actions. SARA merely presented the evidence. Walter rubbed his temples. Why would you do this? Because for 4 years I have tried every appropriate channel. I have filed complaints about discrimination and credit theft. I have presented evidence of my contributions. I have requested appropriate recognition. All were ignored or dismissed. I looked each of them in the eye. When systems fail, sometimes they need to be rebooted. Alexander leaned forward. The legal implications of what you have done are carefully considered. I finished for him. I developed SARA with official approval. Its core functionality, monitoring and assessing system usage, is documented in company records. The attribution feature simply organizes existing metadata. No confidential information has been compromised, no systems damaged. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. This contains my formal complaint of gender discrimination, hostile work environment, and intellectual property theft with comprehensive documentation. A copy has been sent to the board of directors and another is with my attorney. Jackson scoffed. You cannot possibly think you will get away with this. I already have, I replied. SARA will complete its current cycle in approximately 7 minutes. After that, systems will return to normal, with one exception. A complete record of everything displayed today will be securely stored in a location only I can access. Walter studied me with new eyes. What do you want, Kitty? Recognition of my contributions. A formal apology for the discriminatory treatment. Appropriate compensation for the intellectual property I have developed. And structural changes to ensure no one else experiences what I have. Or Eleanor challenged. Or nothing dramatic. I will simply take my case and all its documentation to wherever it needs to go. The board, the courts, the media, Maxwell Financial, and all our other clients. The room fell silent as they processed the implications. 4 years of meticulous documentation now organized and authenticated by the very systems they had approved. Alexander broke the silence. The career endgame protocol. That is what you called it in the code snippets I saw. I nodded. An appropriate name, do not. You think today will certainly mark the end of some careers, and potentially the beginning of others. The monitors in Walter's office suddenly returned to their normal displays. The SARA demonstration was complete. 17 minutes of transparency, I said. That is all it took to reveal 4 years of systemic problems. Walter sighed heavily. We need time to discuss this as a leadership team. Of course, I agreed, standing. I will wait at my desk for your decision. But understand this. I did not deploy this system lightly or without consideration of the consequences. Every other avenue was exhausted. As I walked back to my desk, the office was unnaturally quiet. Employees were huddled in small groups, talking in hushed tones. Some looked at me with newfound respect, others with uncertainty. Mason could not meet my eyes. I sat at my workstation outwardly calm, though my heart was racing. I had just executed the most professionally risky move of my career. There was no turning back now. Patricia from QA approached hesitantly. Did you really build a system that could track all of that? I nodded. 4 years of documentation organized by an algorithm designed to identify patterns. The things they called you. The credit they took. How did you stand it for so long? I gave her a small smile. I was playing the long game. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a few pawns to capture the queen. As Patricia returned to her desk, my phone buzzed with a text message from Diana Mitchell. Impressive demonstration. Maxwell needs someone with your skills and integrity. Let's talk regardless of what happens next. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Whatever came next, the truth was finally out. Barbie had shown her true capabilities, and they were far more powerful than anyone had imagined. For 3 hours, I sat at my desk in a strange limbo. The leadership team remained sequestered in Walter's office, while the rest of the employees alternated between working and discussing the morning's revelations in hushed tones. Several colleagues stopped by my desk, some expressing support, others simply curious about how I had pulled it off. Stephanie from database management pulled up a chair. I always knew you were good, but this is next level. I shrugged. When conventional channels fail sometimes, you need to create new ones. They have been in there a long time, she observed, glancing toward Walter's office. They have a lot to discuss, I replied. Legal implications, client relationships, internal policies, their own futures. What about your future, she asked. After this, do you really think you can stay here? It was a fair question. That depends on how they respond. My goal was never destruction. It was correction. At exactly the 3-hour mark, Aaron emerged from Walter's office and approached my desk. His expression was unreadable. The leadership team would like to speak with you now, he said formally. I gathered my notebook and followed him back to Walter's office. Inside, the tension was palpable. Walter sat behind his desk looking exhausted. Jackson stood by the window, arms crossed. Alexander was reviewing documents. Eleanor was notably absent. Please sit down, Kitty, Walter said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. I sat, maintaining my composure. Have you reached a decision? Walter nodded slowly. We have spent the last 3 hours reviewing the evidence presented by your system. We have also consulted with our legal team and the board chairperson. Jackson interjected. To be clear, we still consider your actions today to be completely inappropriate and potentially damaging to the company. Walter held up a hand to silence him. However, we cannot ignore the substance of what was revealed. The documentation you have collected over 4 years presents a concerning pattern that, if made public, would be problematic for Quantum Solutions. Alexander placed a document on the desk. We are prepared to offer you a settlement package. Full recognition of your contributions to our security architecture, financial compensation for past oversights, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. I glanced at the paper but did not pick it up. And my position here? Walter sighed. We believe that after today's events, a continued professional relationship would be difficult. The settlement includes a generous severance package. I had anticipated this. They were trying to make me go away quietly. And the systemic issues, the culture that allowed this situation to develop in the first place. What changes will be implemented to prevent this from happening to someone else? The men exchanged glances. Jackson spoke first. That is an internal matter that does not concern you if you are no longer with the company. I stood up. Then we have nothing further to discuss. I will be taking my case to the board, along with all my documentation. Wait, Alexander said. Please sit back down. Perhaps we can find another solution. I remained standing. I am not interested in being paid to go away while nothing changes. My complaint is not just about my personal treatment, but about a culture that systematically devalues certain contributions based on gender and appearance. What exactly are you proposing? Walter asked. A comprehensive review of company policies and practices by an independent third party. Mandatory training on bias and proper attribution of work. Clear consequences for behaviors like those documented in my reports. And a commitment to transparency in how contributions are recognized and rewarded. Jackson scoffed. You expect us to reshape the entire company because you felt underappreciated? No, I replied firmly. I expect you to reshape the company because the evidence proves it is necessary, and because Maxwell Financial and your other clients will expect nothing less once they understand what happened here today. Walter studied me with new eyes. You are negotiating from a position of strength. I underestimated you, Kitty. We all did. Yes, I agreed. That was the fundamental mistake. Before Walter could respond, there was a knock at the door. His assistant entered looking concerned. Sir Diana Mitchell from Maxwell Financial is on line 1. She says it is urgent. Walter picked up the phone, listening intently. His expression shifted from concern to surprise. Yes, Miss Mitchell. I understand. Yes, she is actually here with me now. I see. That is an interesting proposition. We will certainly discuss it and get back to you shortly. He hung up and looked at me with grudging respect. It seems Maxwell Financial is still interested in working with Quantum Solutions with one condition. They want you to be the lead architect on their security implementation with direct reporting lines to their CISO. Alexander leaned forward. They specifically asked for you. Not just asked, Walter clarified. Demanded. Miss Mitchell made it clear that their decision to proceed hinges entirely on Kitty's involvement and authority over the security architecture. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The client I had supposedly embarrassed the company in front of was now insisting on working directly with me. Jackson broke the silence. This puts us in a difficult position. Actually, I countered it, simplifies things considerably. Maxwell Financial has recognized what Quantum Solutions failed to. A talented security architect has been sidelined due to unconscious bias and a toxic culture. They are offering you a path forward that addresses both the business relationship and the underlying issues. I picked up the settlement offer and handed it back to Alexander. I am not interested in being paid to leave. I am interested in meaningful change and appropriate recognition of my contributions going forward. Walter exchanged glances with the others, then nodded slowly. It seems we need to reconsider our approach. Alexander, would you ask my assistant to arrange an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning? And please ask Eleanor to join us immediately. As Alexander left to make the arrangements, Walter turned back to me. While we await Eleanor, perhaps you could outline specifically what changes you believe are necessary for you to continue working here. I opened my notebook and began detailing my proposals. For the first time in 4 years, they were actually listening. Eleanor arrived 20 minutes later, her expression darkening when she saw me still present. Eleanor, Walter said gravely, Maxwell Financial has made it clear they will only work with us if Kitty leads the security implementation. Eleanor's jaw dropped. After what she did, that is ridiculous. What I did, I interjected calmly, was demonstrate my technical capabilities and document a pattern of discrimination. Maxwell recognized both. Walter nodded. Diana Mitchell was quite impressed with Kitty's security architecture and her determination. Eleanor glared at me. So she throws a tantrum and gets rewarded for it. Actually, Alexander said, reviewing his notes based on the documentation, Kitty attempted to address these issues through proper channels multiple times over 4 years. Each attempt was either ignored or dismissed. We are discussing significant changes to our team structure and company policies, Walter informed Eleanor. Kitty will be leading the Maxwell project directly with a promotion to senior security architect, reporting directly to Alexander. Eleanor's face flushed. This is unbelievable. She blackmailed the company with that system of hers, and now she is being promoted. I maintained my composure. The SARA Protocol simply organized information that already existed within company systems. If the truth feels like blackmail, perhaps that indicates the problem. Walter held up a hand. Enough. The decision has been made. The board will review the details tomorrow, but given Maxwell's position, we have little choice. As the meeting concluded, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that my gamble had paid off. Satisfaction that my work would finally be recognized. Uncertainty about the path forward in a company where relationships would need to be rebuilt. Walking back to my desk, I passed Mason, who looked both embarrassed and impressed. Kitty, he began. We will have plenty of time to talk later, I told him. There will be many changes in the coming days. As word spread through the office about Maxwell's demand and my new position, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Respect began to replace condescension. Collaboration began to replace competition. And somewhere in the company's servers, SARA continued monitoring, ready to ensure that the promised changes would actually be implemented. Barbie had deployed her career endgame, and now a new game was beginning, one where the rules would be fundamentally different. The following weeks brought dramatic changes to Quantum Solutions. The emergency board meeting resulted in a series of policy revisions and structural adjustments that altered the company's landscape. I attended as both witness and architect of the transformation, presenting my documentation and proposals directly to the board members. The most immediate change was my promotion to senior security architect, with direct reporting lines to Alexander and dotted lines to Walter and Diana Mitchell at Maxwell Financial. My first official act was to formally name and register the SARA Protocol as company intellectual property, with myself listed as the primary inventor. Eleanor was reassigned to a client relations role that kept her away from technical decisions and management responsibilities. Jackson received a formal reprimand and was required to complete extensive training on workplace discrimination and proper management practices. Mason, to his credit, publicly acknowledged his role in taking credit for my work and committed to changing his behavior. Walter established a new company-wide policy requiring proper attribution for all technical contributions, with clear consequences for violations. Alexander implemented a blind review process for technical proposals, removing names and identifying information to ensure ideas were evaluated on merit alone. The Maxwell project launched with me leading the security implementation. Diana Mitchell and I established a strong professional relationship, meeting weekly to discuss progress and innovations. Under my leadership, we developed solutions that exceeded their initial requirements, incorporating additional protections I had conceptualized but never been allowed to implement at Quantum. 3 months after what staff now referred to simply as the revelation, I was presenting the first phase results to the Maxwell executive team when Diana pulled me aside afterward. "You have exceeded our expectations, Kitty," she said. "The security architecture you have designed is exceptional." "Thank you," I replied. "It is amazing what can be accomplished when talent is properly recognized and supported." She nodded. Which brings me to a question I have been meaning to ask. Why did you stay? After everything that happened, Maxwell would have hired you directly in a heartbeat. Many companies would have. I considered her question carefully. Leaving would have been easier in many ways, but it would not have created systemic change. By staying and insisting on structural reforms, I ensured that the next woman with technical skills would not face the same barriers. Noble Diana commented. But was it worth it? The daily reminders working alongside people who underestimated you for so long. I smiled. Every morning when I walk into the office now, I see Patricia leading the QA team meetings. I see Stephanie presenting her database innovations without apology. I see new female engineers being hired and their ideas being evaluated on merit. So yes, it was worth it. Back at Quantum, the culture was evolving, though not without resistance. Some employees struggled to adapt to the new expectations around collaboration and attribution. Eleanor in particular maintained a cold distance, though she was careful to remain professionally appropriate in all interactions. One afternoon I found Erin waiting at my office. My cubicle had been replaced with an actual office, with my name on the door, another tangible symbol of the changing hierarchy. "Do you have a minute?" he asked hesitantly. I gestured for him to come in. "Of course." He sat awkwardly. I wanted to apologize. I knew what was happening to you was wrong, but I never spoke up. I was afraid of jeopardizing my own position. Fear is a powerful motivator, I acknowledged. But so is integrity. The thing is, he continued, looking back. I realize I was complicit. Laughing at the IT Barbie jokes, staying silent when your ideas were stolen. I am trying to do better now. I studied him. Awareness is the first step. Action is the second. What are you doing differently? I am calling it out when I see it happening to anyone. Last week I corrected Jackson when he interrupted Stephanie in a meeting. He did not like it, but he stopped doing it. I nodded approvingly. That is exactly how change happens. One interaction at a time. 6 months after the revelation, Walter called a company-wide meeting. The Maxwell project had been successfully completed, resulting in a 5-year maintenance contract and referrals to 2 other financial institutions. Quantum's reputation and stock price were both rising. "Today I want to recognize the team that made this success possible," Walter announced. "Led by our senior security architect Kitty Williams, whose innovative approach to security has redefined our capabilities and our culture." As I stood to acknowledge the applause, I caught sight of a small group of newer female engineers watching with unabashed admiration. They had been hired during our expansion and had never experienced the old quantum culture. To them, I was not it Barbie, but a technical leader who had opened doors they could now walk through. After the meeting, one of them, a bright young programmer named Amanda, approached me. "Miss Williams, I just wanted to say thank you. I heard about what happened before I joined and how you changed things. It makes a difference knowing someone fought for us to be taken seriously." Her words touched me deeply. The fight is never really over, Amanda, but it gets easier when you are not fighting alone. Later that day, I was working late when Alexander stopped by my office. "The board has approved the establishment of a new division," he informed me. "Security, Innovation, and Development. They want you to lead it." I looked up in surprise. "A director position?" He nodded. "With a team of your choosing and budget authority. You will report directly to Walter and myself." "What about Eleanor? Will she be involved?" Alexander shook his head. "Eleanor has accepted a position with another company. Between us, I think she found the new quantum culture challenging." As he left, I turned to my computer where a small indicator showed that SARA was still running quietly in the background, monitoring and documenting. I had not needed to activate any of its protocols since the revelation, but its presence remained a silent guardian of the progress we had made. I opened the system and began typing new code, a modification that would transition SARA from a protective watchdog to a proactive tool for identifying and nurturing talent throughout the organization. The career endgame protocol had served its purpose. Now it was time to build something focused on beginnings rather than endings. As I worked, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From being dismissed as IT Barbie to leading my own division. From having my ideas stolen to having them celebrated. from keeping quiet to speaking truth to power. The transformation was not just in my position or the company culture. It was in me. I had discovered that sometimes the most powerful code is not what you write for the computer, but what you write for yourself, the algorithm of your own integrity executed with precision when it matters most. 1 year after the revelation, I stood in the newly expanded Quantum Solutions headquarters, watching as employees filled the auditorium for our annual company meeting. My Security Innovation Division occupied the entire east wing of the building, housing 32 engineers, researchers, and security specialists I had personally selected. The company had grown considerably, nearly doubling in size and revenue. Our security solutions built on the architecture I had designed were now industry-leading, with Maxwell Financial serving as our most vocal advocate. 3 other major financial institutions had signed contracts along with 2 healthcare systems and a government agency. Walter approached as I surveyed the gathering crowd. "Quite a different scene from last year, is not it?" I nodded. "Different in all the right ways." "The board wanted me to give you a heads up," he said quietly. "They will be announcing the succession plan today." This caught me by surprise. "Succession? Are you retiring?" He smiled. "Not immediately, but within the next 18 months. Alexander will become CEO, and they want you to step into his role as CTO." I took a moment to absorb this. That island. Unexpected. "Is it?" Walter raised an eyebrow. "You have transformed not just our security architecture but our entire approach to technology development. The attribution system you implemented has increased innovation throughout the company by ensuring people get credit for their ideas. Your talent development program has identified capabilities in employees that we never recognized before." He paused, looking slightly uncomfortable. "You were right, about the culture we had created. It was limiting our potential in ways I never realized." Before I could respond, the meeting was called to order. As Walter took the stage to make his announcements, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The SARA Protocol had evolved from a defensive mechanism to an integral part of Quantum's operations monitoring, not just for problems but for opportunities. The career endgame protocol had been archived, its code preserved but dormant, a historical artifact of a battle now won. The succession announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. As Walter publicly acknowledged my future role as CTO, I scanned the audience, noting the diversity that had not existed a year ago. The technical teams now reflected a much broader range of backgrounds and perspectives, each contribution valued on its merits rather than its source. After the meeting, Diana Mitchell, who had attended as a special guest, pulled me aside. "CTO," she said with a smile. "A long way from IT Barbie." I laughed. "No one has used that nickname in months. I am not sure the new employees even know it existed." "That is the true measure of change," Diana observed. "When the old ways become unimaginable to the newcomers." We walked together toward the reception area where employees were gathering for refreshments. "I am curious," Diana said. "The SARA Protocol you showed us that day. Could it really have done more damage if you had wanted it to?" I considered my answer carefully. SARA was never designed to be destructive. Its purpose was revelation, not retaliation. The career endgame protocol could have been more aggressive, but that was never my goal. "Impressive restraint," Diana commented. "Many people in your position might have wanted revenge." "Revenge is short-sighted," I replied. "Systemic change is lasting. I wanted to transform the company, not destroy it." As we mingled with colleagues, Amanda, now the team lead for one of my security projects, approached with a young woman I did not recognize. "Miss Williams, this is Jessica, our newest hire. She specifically applied to Quantum because of the article about you in Tech Innovators magazine." Jessica extended her hand nervously. "It is an honor to meet you. Your story about standing up against discrimination while demonstrating technical excellence inspired me to pursue a career in security architecture." I felt a surge of emotion. "Welcome to Quantum, Jessica. I look forward to seeing what you will contribute." Later that evening, I returned to my office to finish some work. On my desk was a small package with a note from Alexander, a reminder of how far we have come. Inside was a custom chess piece, a queen made of circuit board material with intricate security code etched into its surface. The base was inscribed with the words, Career Endgame Checkmate. I smiled, placing it on my desk next to my computer, where the SARA interface quietly monitored the company systems. The Queen had indeed captured the board, but not through destruction, through transformation. Opening my laptop, I began working on a new project, a book about my experience and the lessons I had learned. The working title, Beyond the Blinking Lights, Recoding Tech Culture from the Inside. As I typed, I reflected on the essential lessons of my journey. First, documentation is power. Every incident I recorded, every contribution I tracked became the evidence that could not be denied. In a world that tries to erase certain voices, creating an undeniable record is revolutionary. Second, systems can be changed from within, but only when you understand them completely. By mastering the technical infrastructure of quantum, I gained the leverage needed to force recognition of deeper problems. Third, the goal should never be destruction but transformation. The same skills that could have crashed the company instead rebuilt it into something better. And finally, true victory is not personal advancement, but systemic change that benefits others. Becoming CTO was gratifying, but seeing young women like Jessica enter a workplace where they would be valued for their minds rather than dismissed for their appearance, that was the real triumph. I closed my laptop and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were countless other women being called diminutive nicknames, having their ideas stolen, being told to stay in their lane. Some of them would read my book. Some would implement their own versions of SARA. Some would find other ways to change their environments. All of them needed to know what I had discovered. Sometimes being underestimated is your greatest advantage. While they are distracted by who they think you are, you can quietly become who you need to be. The next morning I arrived early to find Walter in the lobby looking at the newly installed company values display. Family first and recognition of contribution were prominently featured alongside technical excellence and client focus. "Good morning, Kitty," he greeted me. "Ready for the Maxwell presentation today?" "Absolutely," I replied. "Their new security requirements are challenging, but my team has some innovative solutions." He nodded. "I never properly thanked you, you know." "For what?" "For not leaving. For staying to fix what was broken instead of walking away. It would have been easier to start fresh somewhere else." I considered this. Sometimes the hardest places to stay are the ones that need change the most. As we walked toward the elevator, I thought about the long journey from that day when Eleanor had joked about the blinking lights keeping Barbie entertained. The lights in the server room still blinked, but now they represented something entirely different. A system I had built, a culture I had transformed, and a legacy that would continue long after I moved on. And that is the most important lesson I learned. When they underestimate you, do not correct them immediately. Watch, wait, document, and build something so undeniable that when the moment of revelation comes, there is no going back to the way things were. If you have ever been underestimated, overlooked, or had your contributions dismissed, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below about how you handled it, or what you wish you had done differently. Like and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself in professional environments, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that being underestimated can sometimes be your greatest strategic advantage. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, in the game of career chess, sometimes the most powerful move is the one they never see coming.